Welcome to Access Austin. In my last episode, I explained how accommodations change from high school to college. In high school, accommodations are about facilitating success, while in college, accommodations are about facilitating access. Please check out that last episode if you have more questions about that. But in this episode, I'm going to kind of be continuing to focus on college accommodations by providing tips for how to talk with the disability office at a college or university. Now, this first tip is very simple. It is to feel comfortable about talking to the disability counselor at a college or university. Why is that? Well, whatever you say to that disability counselor is protected under FERPA, which is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. It means that the college disability counselor cannot run and tell admissions that you have a disability. They cannot tell any of your professors about your disability. It is all entirely confidential. So feel free to really talk about your disability and your accommodations, knowing that everything you say is being kept in confidence and kept within the disability office. Although your accommodations generally will be told to professors each time you register for accommodations for a semester. Those professors should receive some notification from the disability office about what your accommodations are in the class, or you may be provided a letter to show the professor relating to you being registered with the disability office and what your accommodations are. However, in that letter, there is nothing mentioned about your disability. Most likely, in order to receive accommodations, you will need to present some medical documentation. The gold standard is a psychoeducational evaluation. A psychoeducational evaluation looks at your processing for auditory, verbal, visual information, and looks at how you're basically processing that information, how successful you are, and really breaks down a lot of the functioning into what is the expected or average way a person processes information versus how you're processing information, and can show that you may need extra time or some supports in order to succeed in a classroom when it comes to certain types of assignments or tests or projects and that type of thing. A lot of times there are recommendations from a psychologist who has a PhD or a Psych D, and they are telling what accommodations they believe, based on all the testing, are most important for you to succeed in a college environment. And really, those recommendations hold a lot of weight with the disability office. Now, it's also important to note that you could have other medical documentation, like a doctor's note saying that you have anxiety or depression, or that you just had a concussion, and those types of things will also be considered by the disability counselor. If you have no documentation, you can describe, what you're looking for and why you feel it is necessary, but it normally requires some documentation to receive services from a college disability office. This next tip is to empower students to talk about why they need their accommodations. A lot of times, students with disabilities don't feel comfortable talking to the disability counselor, and they let their parents lead the conversation, because that is what commonly happens through elementary school, through high school, during IEPs, that it's parent-led and the student is kind of secondary. But when you transition to college, it's important that you now take control of the conversation. You're the one bringing up why you need the accommodations, talking about your disability if you feel comfortable. Those are all things that you should really try and do, because it will help you get the services that you need from the college and help them understand why you need these accommodations in order to access the course content. This next tip is for inside information from me, someone who has mild cerebral palsy and went to college, and someone who also works at a disability office. And what this tip is that if there is an accommodation that you believe is reasonable, and that the disability counselor flatly says, I don't think we can do this, you can still ask them to run it through a process and to reach a determination if it is reasonable or not. Now, what that means is talking to professors, talking to the dean of the program, and seeing if that uses too much the college's resources, like money or time, or if it is creating a fundamental alteration to course content, you basically have that power to make sure that whatever accommodation you're requesting, that it is thoroughly reviewed, because the Office of Civil Rights says that the college cannot flatly reject an accommodation without going through a process. That, in fact, colleges have gotten off for coming up with the wrong answer when it comes to an accommodation, but they are given credit a lot of times in court if they did go through a process. So having a process in place is really important for colleges and universities, and you should encourage that disability office to go through their process when evaluating whether an accommodation is reasonable or not. So going along those lines, it's important that if you do receive a rejection from a college or university, that it be in writing. You'll probably receive it via email. You don't want anything through verbal communication. You want to try and know what your accommodations are and have that in writing, so that you're able to be really clear about what they are legally required to provide. And also then you can ask for those accommodations later if you were to change colleges or something like that, or take a placement exam like the GRE or something like that. You could use whatever accommodations that they are providing as a baseline as evidence of what is needed. Now, in addition to, if there is something contentious relating to an accommodation, most colleges and universities should have a grievance process in place where you can appeal and make your case about why that accommodation should be granted. So keep that in mind as well. I hope that you found this tutorial helpful, and please let me know in the comments if you have any further suggestions. I really appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you for watching Access Austin. My name is Austin, and I work full-time as an assistive technology coordinator, and I am dedicating most of my free time to producing content for this YouTube channel. If you are enjoying the videos, please consider becoming a Patreon backer. The link is in the description. If you have any accessibility needs or questions relating to assistive technology, accommodations, or website and PDF accessibility, please contact me at accessauston@gmail.com. Thank you so much for watching, and please like, comment, and subscribe, and tune in to the next video.